What up, everyone? Here to do a quick overview of this coming up week, what I'm watching, and some tickers that I'm watching this week. So, to jump in it, I always like to start looking at the ER calendar and the econ calendar. Right off, we have some big names. We have Zoom, Oxy, Target, Neo, Lowe's, Salesforce, Costco, to name some earnings to be keeping an eye on to watch. The big thing I'm watching out for is all the data being released. We have a lot of data coming out pre-market almost every single day, as well as during market, especially like Tuesday, we have consumer confidence. Wednesday, we have some data coming out. Thursday, normal jobless claims, and Friday, PMI and ISM. So every day has some data being released pre-market and during market. So there's going to be some volatility created during these times. So it's something to note and keep an eye on. Next thing I like to do is I like to jump to see what the expected move is for the week to give me an idea realistically where we're at. So the expected move this week is $7.65 roughly. So that keeps SPY within two standard deviations between 411 to 380. So that's kind of the range I'm going to be realistically looking at that we stay within. Just to give reference, here's last week's expected moves, and this is where we actually closed. Everything closed within two standard deviations. Most of them closed within one. All right, so jumping straight into some of the tickers. So we'll start with SPY. SPY we broke down over this week, but we had some nice volume coming in as we reached this demand area around this 393, as you see. So as we're coming down, volume starting to pick up, which shows that there's potentially buyers present as we enter this zone. So I'm keeping an eye on this 390 to 387 area as support. We break below that, we could see 380s. We're able to hold above this. I'm going to watching 395 as resistance up to this 402, 403 area, potentially pushing into this 408. Next above 408 would be like the 410 area. So those are some support and resistances I'm watching. And then jumping over to QQQ, kind of the same thing. We broke below 300. We had a nice bounce staying right above 290. We do have this little gap right here, so I'm keeping an eye on it. So I moved my support down here more, a little bit lower to this 288, 289 area. That's what I'm going to be seeing as support. If we're not able to hold that, we could see potentially down to this next base at 280. On the upside, I'm watching 293 area, potentially this 298 to 300. Break above 300, we could see filling this gap into this 303, 305 areas, resistance all the way up to 310. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on for QQQ. Next, we have IWM. Same with IWM, we broke down, we broke this 190 area, but we bounced and we're holding above 187. 187 is a pretty big level here, so I'm keeping an eye on this at 187 as support. Below that, we have 185. If we're not able to hold above 185, we could come down to 180 pretty quickly, potentially a little lower into the 175, 178 area. On the upside, I'm looking for us to get back above 190. That's the big resistance now. Pushing above 190, we could quickly move up to this 195 area as the next resistance. So those are what I'm keeping an eye on as far as the indices overall. And then some tickers I'm watching. So starting first with American Airlines. American Airlines, we're over here, especially on the 1 hour. We have a key area of demand right here, this 1530 to 1510 area. As you can see, the bouncing. We have a bullish RSI divergence here and a falling wedge potentially forming. So I'm going to be looking at us as we retest this area for potential bounce to the upside. Resistance would be 16 up to the 1670 area. We break below 15, we could come down to this 1450 area fairly quickly. So that is what I'm keeping an eye on here. Next, we have Apple. Apple filled this downside gap below this 147. We had some volume step in around this area. So some key areas I'm watching is on the support side is 145. Below that, we have 142, 143 area down to 140. Key resistance is going to be this 150 area. If we break above 150, we could come into this gap around 153. And then this big resistance is 157.50 area, which we still haven't broke out of. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on here. Make this a little bigger so you can see all the stickers. Next is AMD. Um, AMD, we started filling this gap. We still have some room down to the 75. So that is support. Below the 75, we could come down to the 72 to 70 area and fill both these gaps to the downside. But it seems fairly strong. I like how the daily looks. So I'm watching resistance at 80 and then 83. And if we zoom in a little bit on the 4 hour, we see how the 75 area is pretty big demand, but I can also see potentially a double bottom forming. If we do fill this gap, we could see a potential double bottom forming right here with some RSI divergence being created. So this is something I'm keeping my eye on here. Next, we have Microsoft. Microsoft, we broke below this 255 area, which was pretty big demand from before. So once we got below that, we came back down to test this 248 area. So I'm watching 248 as support. We break below that, we have 242 all the way down to 238. So those are my key areas to the downside. The upside, if we can get back above this 255, we can push fairly quickly into this 260 gap and potentially up to this 264 area. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on here. Next, we have NVIDIA. NVIDIA had earnings last week, and we actually broke above this 230 area, which has been a pretty key area for a while. We created this really big gap, though, so it's something I am keeping an eye on. What was that? So it's kind of zooming in. 230 is going to be a key area for me for NVIDIA, depending on how we open tomorrow. So if we're able to hold 230, I'm be watching 235 as this bull flag could play out up to this 248 area. If we do lose and break below this, I'm be watching 226, 225 area. Down to 220, if we break below 220, we could fill all these gaps to the downside, coming down to this 210, 207 area, which would be the next supports. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on here. PayPal, kind of talked about this stock last week. Same thing, inverse head and shoulders. It still hasn't really played out. We rejected the 75, 76 area and came back down. We started to fill this gap, so I'm looking for this gap to fill down to the 71 area, 72. From here, I would look for a bounce, potentially pushing up to the 76, then to the $80 area. So I'm still looking for this move to play out. I have some alerts set right at this gap fill as we start entering it, and volume's kind of starting to pick up. So that's what I want to see. And then finally, we have Tesla. So Tesla's holding above this 191, 190 support. It's been a pretty key area. As long as we're able to hold that, we can see this push back into 200 and then 207, 208, potentially retesting this 214. If we cannot hold this 190, 191 area, I'm gonna be looking to push down to the next support, which would be 180, and potentially down this 170, 72 area. So that's real quickly some tickers and what I'm looking for this week and levels. So let's have everyone let's have a good week. Thank you.